Sri Gohanian, ladies and gentlemen, Singaporeans and friends, thank you for having me with you at this very important occasion. Very important because we are not just at a youth forum, but we're actually launching a very ambitious Singapore youth plan. It's only natural that young people will ask, what sort of future lies ahead? And how will I find my place in it? And how will I find a life of meaning? These are very natural questions here in Singapore and everywhere in the world. But let me start with a quick reflection on what it was like for my generation when we were young. We grew up in Singapore in the 60s and 70s. It was a very different time. But some things have not changed, and I'll come to that in a minute. You know, in the 60s and 70s, there was a song that was always in the air. Ke Sera Sera. If you know how to sing it, by the way, it dates you very well. Ke Sera Sera. It's a very simple song. Ke Sera Sera. Whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Ke Sera Sera. What will be, will be. It was popular internationally, and it was, after all, a time of great uncertainty. People could not tell what the future would bring. Southeast Asia was comprised of newly independent states finding their way in the world. The Vietnam War was still at its height. And here we were in Singapore, a small fledgling nation that very few people in the world thought could succeed or could even survive. Yet the simple, cheerful optimism in the song struck a chord. Yes, we couldn't tell what the future will bring, but we were not just leaving it to fate. We did not think the future is not ours to see, as the song says. But we didn't think the future was not ours to see. The future was ours to make. And that was the feeling at the time. People had very little to start with. There was great uncertainty as to where jobs would come from. And you know, in your parents' and grandparents' generation, most people would just do any job that came along. Just do anything that came along. There was great uncertainty. But there was a feeling of optimism around the island. Amongst parents, children, teachers, everyone, there was a feeling of optimism. A feeling that we were going to make life better for ourselves. There was a great appetite for education. But I can tell you frankly, most of us at that time didn't think too much about the rest of our lives. We didn't actually plan ahead. In fact, I certainly didn't have a plan. In fact, I didn't have any clear idea as to what I would do in life. But I was very clear about one thing. I wanted to do what I enjoyed when I was young, and I took it very seriously. I took what I enjoyed very seriously. That I was clear about. For me, that meant sports. It filled up all my time. And I can just tell you as an anecdote that I used to keep a very small diary when I was in school. You know, in those days, students sometimes kept small diaries. Do they still do so? Well, I mean, in our time, it was with a pen and a real physical book, you know, paper. And each day you just write down what sport, I just write what sport I did, was it Farrer Park, Padang, where was it, who would be playing against, maybe sometimes the result. And I found at the end of the year, I was 15 years old, at the end of the year, I actually looked through the whole diary, and I found that I had played a sport every day of the year except 3 days, including Sundays. And not seldom I played two sports in one day. So it filled up my life, it filled my time. And I didn't realize it at the time. But doing what I enjoyed and doing it seriously is what shaped me in life. It was through sports, I was talking just now with Shayna, our champion bowler. And she was talking about, she summarized it very simply for me. It's all about character. It's all about character. It's through sports that I made friends with people from very different backgrounds. Different races, of course, but not just different races. Their parents were doing quite different things, including some of the humblest jobs. We learned how to win and lose. That's very important. Learn how to win and lose. So winning doesn't get to your head. And when you lose, it just means you work on those gaps in your game. That's what it meant to lose. You work harder on the gaps in your game. We knew that every member in the team counted, which also meant that we wanted everyone to be as good as they can be. Because when they are better, we are also better as a team. And very importantly, we found ourselves looking at each other. We found ourselves looking at each other as youth, not as different from each other, but as the same. Same interests, same sense of exhilaration each time we gave it all in the game. We thought of ourselves as the same. And even when we were not in the game, when we were watching, that same exhilaration from watching someone else do something really exceptional on the field. Like, by the way, yesterday, Ilhan Fandi's last goal. I don't know how many of you saw it. Incredible. Took the ball, and then he did without it touching the ground. That same exhilaration that makes you, we are all the same. Same interest, same exhilaration from doing something together, wanting to see someone else do something exceptional. We did not see ourselves as different from each other. I believe that still works today. Young Singaporeans today face uncertainties, although not as profoundly as your parents' generation and your grandparents' generation. But that's worth remembering. You also have greater aspirations and many new aspirations in fields that never existed before. That's a plus. But what hasn't changed is this. If you spend time on what you're interested in and enjoy, if you take what you enjoy very seriously, you will develop an aptitude for life that takes you forward and keeps taking you forward. You develop an aptitude for life. You don't know what the future will bring, but you have developed an aptitude for life that makes your future. So I believe strongly in that, and I don't think that changes across generations. And if you do it, if you do what you enjoy with people of different backgrounds as much as you can, it also broadens your horizon and adds that much more purpose to your life. So I'm actually quite heartened by the aspirations of today's youth. National Youth Council has done a lot of engagements over many months now, and it's also done its latest survey, very thorough survey of Singapore youth. And they highlight what today's aspirations are amongst the young. And amongst the most widely held aspirations are the fact that, first, unsurprisingly, our youth want to acquire skills that will help them in their career, but they also want very much to pursue their interests and their hobbies. Not just career goals. They want to pursue interests and hobbies. They want to do good for others, and they want to be part of a society where people of different backgrounds can be friends. I'm highlighting this because this was top of the chart in terms of people's aspirations. Top of the chart. People want to be in a society where persons of different backgrounds can be friends. And I was very heartened to see that. We must make this possible for this new generation.
We can and must defy the trends that we see in many other societies, where social belonging is weakening. Social belonging is weakening, whether along lines of race and ethnicity, or educational status, or just socioeconomic backgrounds. Social belonging is weakening, and we can and must defy that trend in Singapore. We're starting from a good place, and we can make the most of the greater exposure and knowledge that today's generation has compared to any previous generation. We can also make the most of the constructive discontent that today's young generation has with the present. Constructive discontent, not the cynicism that says that nothing can improve, but the restlessness and the fresh pair of eyes that says, surely we can do better. Surely we can widen opportunities. We can give everyone the opportunity to live a life of greater purpose. We can create a fair and caring society. And that constructive discontent, that restlessness, that desire to do better, is a force for good in Singapore. We see this sense of purpose among many of today's youth, including some who have rebounded from the greatest disadvantages. And many have become mentors in their own right now. Shirlene Ng, I recognize Shirlene in the second row. She had a very difficult background. Mother passed away from suicide. Shirlene herself nearly lost her own way. Went to Temasek Poly, graduated in psychology, recently became a President's Challenge Springboard Fellow, and now she volunteers. By the way, I must stand up also. Shirlene is volunteering now with OVINA, supporting young female trauma survivors. She knows what it was like. Naresh Ansari, who's also here somewhere. Naresh, are you here? Please stand up. So Naresh also knows what it was like. He had to overcome childhood adversity, gangs, drug addiction. He overcame it and he made it through ITE successfully. And now he's much more than that. He is a youth community builder at Circle in Nisun Center. As a coach, a mentor, and as a friend helping other young people to develop a sense of purpose. Afzal Hadi, who's also here somewhere. Afzal, are you here? Please, Afzal. Wow. Afzal developed a system of mentorship in a different area. Mentorship for those who are embarking on a social work career. In other words, those who are going to become social workers. They too need to be mentored. And he developed it while he was still in his studies, I think in his final year, about 5 years ago. He co-founded a social work student mentorship program, and that initiative succeeded in a way that caught the eye of Singapore Association of Social Workers, which was itself developing a system for mentorship. So it's an example of how young people, through their own initiative, can develop new models, get other young people involved, test it out, improve it, in a way that actually becomes part of a broader system. So, very good initiative by Afzal. Thank you. Chester Matthias Tan, very different, and I'm choosing examples here because they are different from each other. So Chester is very different.
and the shirt he's wearing gives you a clue of what I'm about to say. Chester is making an impact in heritage. He founded the the Heritage Business Foundation. It's a non-profit and it works with our traditional businesses to try and keep them afloat and if possible to help them to thrive. I think we all want that to happen. Traditional businesses, be it in food or clothing or craft or other areas, they're all part of our culture. And he wants to keep them alive. And in so doing, keep Singapore heritage alive. And beyond heritage, I know Chester's also volunteering in a range of other areas, in sustainability, and you're also a lawyer who's a mentor to youth. So Chester, thank you very much.